Hi everybody, my name is Lisa and I am one of the English teachers here on Verbling.com, and in this hour I'm going to be offering a reading class. So this hour we are going to be reading an article together, and I already put the link to the article in the Verbling chat. So if you are interested in joining this class, then you can go ahead and click on the link and it will open up a Google document, and that is where I have pasted the document. It's from a magazine here in the United States called Psychology Today. And so the Psychology Today magazine has lots of articles related to people, things we do, the relationships with people, that type of thing. And so for my English reading classes, I like to bring in a variety of topics. Sometimes it's about finances, money, learning strategies, current events, things like that, because since you guys are wanting to practice your English and also expand your knowledge of English and usage of English, I always think that it's a good idea to read and listen to and talk about a wide variety of topics. So not just one thing, but lots of different things, so that when you need to speak English with somebody, you have lots of vocabulary that you can use and lots of experience talking about different types of things. So that's why I like to bring in different topics, different articles. And I'm glad to see that Mario is joining us, because this particular article, hi there Mario, this particular article is going to be about parenting and an American lady's point of view about the French, and then of course compared to Americans. So we'll see, and then you guys will be able to see whether or not these ideas are true for people in your country. So go ahead and click on the link. Looks like we have lots of people already there. Good. And I'm going to put it in my screen share so that people can also just read it from looking at my screen, if you want to do it that way. And I just want to say hi to everybody. So hi there, Amparo. How are you?
Hi, teacher. I'm good.
Okay, good. You sound quiet.
Yeah, I have a little sore throat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Actually, last week I was a substitute teacher in my daughter's classroom because their teacher was ill. He had a sore throat and a cold, stuffy nose, and couldn't talk very well. So I was called in to come and substitute for the teacher. And I was thinking, what a bummer it is to have a cold in the summer. It's so warm and sunny out. Yeah. Usually you think of colds in the winter, but it happens. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Hamid. How are you?
Hello, Lisa. I'm very well. What about you?
I'm doing well. I don't know if you guys have heard, but the West Coast, I live in Washington State, but many states in the West Coast of the United States we're having a heat wave. So for me, that's only like in the 80s, which is not very hot, but we don't have air conditioning, so people are pretty hot. Like in my cafe, it was very hot inside. But where I am from, which is California, they're having temperatures over 100, like 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's, I don't know exactly what that is in Celsius, but it's like in the 40s. So it's pretty hot. So that's what's happening around here. We're getting a lot of sun and a lot of heat. Which
I can calculate and I can say what Celsius maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Yes.
Turkey is also hot, but I prefer to use natural air conditioner. I mean, I am opening my window, so
Yeah.
a little bit wind is coming.
Yes. Yes, I have my windows open as well. And we have been sleeping with all the windows in the house open to let in the cool air at night to try to cool down. Yes. Works pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah. Ishmael, how are you doing?
I am fine.
Good.
Lisa, hi.
Hi there. And Mario's there with your picture of you on your bike.
Yes, my ex-bike.
Your ex-bike. Is your old bike? Did you trade it in for a new one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yamaha. This one is a BMW.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow. That would be really hot if you had to wear all of that gear. Do you get hot when you're riding?
No, not during when you're riding, it's okay, but when you stop.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
I think it was yesterday at my cafe. I was working, and some bikers came in, and they had on the leather pants, and they looked pretty hot. They had been doing a 3-day bike trip all around Washington and going up. I think they were from Canada, but
okay.
yeah, they came in and got some drinks and stuff. So
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
And Owner, how are you?
I am fine, thanks, Lisa. And
Great.
you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Owner, where are you from?
I am from Turkey.
Turkey also. Wow, Turkey.
Yeah.
We have 3 people from Turkey in the class.
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. And Goliath, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you, Lisa?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. Long time. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it's been a while.
I've been busy a bit.
Yeah.
Couldn't even breathe.
What? Busy doing surgeries?
Yes, many.
What type of surgeries do you usually do?
Abdominal one, and
Oh.
yeah, it's general, but we focus on. So if we don't find the other specialty, we can manage to fix something.
Well, I'm going to tell you something that I read about that was interesting that maybe is good for everybody to know. The other day I was reading online, or in the newspaper, I think, and there was a young boy in a Seattle hospital, and he was a teenager, and he had come in because he was ill, and he had been throwing up and not feeling very good, and so they didn't know what was going on with him. You know, it wasn't just a simple enteritis or gastroenteritis or some kind of stomach ache or flu, but eventually they did some tests, and eventually they found a little piece of a brush that you clean the barbecue with, and this little piece of wire from that brush was stuck in, I think, one of his, like, some part of his intestines, and it was irritating his intestines and then making him feel sick. And they were able to find it, and when they took that little piece of wire out, then of course he got better. But that was very unique problem.
But, did he eat this or swallow it?
Yeah, he must have swallowed it. Maybe it got, just from the, somebody, when you pick up the hamburger off of the grill, maybe it came along with the hamburger, so he ate it. Yeah.
I'll tell you something. I don't want to interrupt, but there is a kind
Yeah, go
of we operate one girl,
Yeah.
and we found like a ball of hair. She
Oh,
was
wow.
eating her hair. Yeah, it's kind of mental sickness. It's called protopozoare. I don't. This is the name is strange
Yeah.
of this sickness. So it exists that people can eat their hair.
Ah, wow, yeah. Like she was sucking on her hair?
No, eating
Eating it. Oh.
hair. Yeah.
Just- wow.
And then we found a big piece of condensate hair
Uh-huh.
stuck together and like a ball,
Wow.
like a ball. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was making her
was very
sick.
big. Yeah, that was very big.
Wow. Yeah, I never heard of that either. Well, because I know that cats, they lick themselves, and then they can get fur balls, and then they throw it up, you know?
This is a herbal, but this is hairball.
Yeah. Wow, interesting. Well, you must come across a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, we discover things really.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting, real life stuff. Okay, so here's the article that we have for today. It's called Why French Kids Don't Have ADHD. So ADHD is a type of a diagnosis, attention deficit hyperactive disorder is what it stands for. And basically, you might have just known about it that they talk about it a lot in the United States. Apparently, a lot of kids are having this diagnosis. And it has to do with not being able to sit still in classroom and pay attention and having a lot of energy. And so in the United States, many children are given medications to try to control this behavior so that they can pay attention in class. And that is a very big topic of debate. Should we give medications to the children? Should we not? Are there other things that you can do to help these children? And there's people who have opinions on all the sides, all different opinions. Yes, no, maybe sometimes, maybe not other times. It really depends. So this particular article was written by this lady here, Marilyn Wedge. She's a PhD, and she is for, she prefers not medicating children in her approach, and so she wrote this article. And so that gives you a little bit of background to understand the article. All right,
what is
yes?
the ADHD? Is
okay.
It
yeah, ADHD means attention.
Yeah, Amit put it in Verbling.
Yes, there it is. Oh, good. You're ahead of me, Hamid. I was going to type it. My problem is when I start typing, and I usually like to keep talking, but it mutes me, so it kind of makes it sound weird. Thanks, Hamid. That's what it stands for. So attention deficit. So you have a deficit. That means like you can't pay attention, basically. It's hard for you to pay attention, especially in class, because we're talking about kids. But they also have adults who are diagnosed with this particular diagnosis, and they have the similar issues with their jobs. For example, it's hard for them to pay attention in meetings or to their work. They keep changing what they want to do, how they're doing it. And you can have ADD or you can have ADHD. ADD is attention deficit disorder. You just add the disorder to the end. But if you have ADHD, you add that component of hyperactivity, and hyperactivity means you have a lot of energy, you're very hyper. Like, for example, I was substituting in my daughter's classroom, and these are children who are 10 and 11 mostly, and there were two kids in there who maybe somebody would say they have this, and the behavior is like they're very talkative, very enthusiastic, they get bored very easily, they can't really sit still, they're moving their bodies all the time, and they keep talking, and even though you might say, hey, let's be quiet now because we're going to listen to this person talk, they can't really control that. They get so excited and they yell something out, or their brain is thinking really quickly and they come up with other ideas. So compared to the other children in the classroom who are, paying attention and being quiet, it can look like, that's a certain type of behavior that is difficult for the teacher sometimes. So that's kind of where the problem comes in. All right, so let's see what this lady has to say about the French. And then Mario, he can be our expert French on the French since he's from France. May or may not be true what this lady is saying. We don't know. Why French kids don't have ADHD. French children don't need medications to control their behavior. All right, that's the title and the subtitle. In the United States, at least 9% of school-aged children have been diagnosed with ADHD and are taking pharmaceutical medications. In France, the percentage of kids diagnosed and medicated for ADHD is less than 0.5%. how come the epidemic of ADHD, which has become firmly established in the United States, has almost completely passed over children in France? Okay, Amparo, why don't you, can you read?
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
The United States, at least 9% of school-age children have been diagnosed with ADHD and are taking pharmaceutical medications. In France, the percentage of kids diagnosed and medicated for ADHD is less than 0.5%. How come the epidemic of ADHD, which has become firmly established in the United States, has almost completely passed over children in France?
Good. So at least 9%. So that's not a very high percentage, but we're talking about a lot of people because the United States is a very populated country, so it's quite a few, children, million. I don't know if it's a million, but it's a lot. And school-aged, so in the United States, in most places, school-aged, they're talking about the ages usually between 5 and 18, 17, 18. And they are diagnosed, so they get a diagnosis from a doctor or a psychiatrist, probably. And they are put onto these pharmaceutical medications. So pharmaceutical is referring to the drugs that you actually have to get a prescription for, not just over-the-counter drugs like you can go if you have a cold or something, you can go buy, Tylenol or aspirin or cold cough syrup or something like that. But these drugs you actually need a prescription for, and you have to go to the pharmacy to get them. They're being medicated. That just means they're getting medications. And so she's saying it's becoming epidemic, so that means that when an epidemic happens, it's just lots and lots of people are having this same issue, and it has become firmly. The word firmly is describing how it's very fixed. It's not just new or a little bit, but actually very steady and very firm. People really believe this is what's happening, and so there's lots of books about it now, lots of kids who are on medications. It's very firmly fixed in the United States, this diagnosis. All right, is ADHD a biological neurological disorder? Surprisingly, the answer to this question depends on whether you live in France or in the United States. In the United States, child psychiatrists consider ADHD to be a biological disorder with biological causes. The preferred treatment is also biological. Psychostimulant medications such as Ritalin and Adderall. Okay, Goliath.
Okay. Is ADHD a biological neurological disorder? Surprisingly, the answer to this question depends on whether you live in France or in the United States. In the United States, child psychiatrists consider ADHD to be a biological disorder with biological causes. The preferred treatment is also biological psychostimulant medications such as Ritalin and Adderall.
Adderall. So biological, neurological. So is it happening in your actual physical body, your biology, and in your neurological system in your brain, that type of thing? So a disorder is a problem. If you have some kind of a disorder, it's a malfunctioning, and doctors and researchers try to figure out what's happening, and it's often from this type of approach, a biological, what's happening in the body, what's happening in your nervous system. That's the approach that the doctors or the researchers are, the point of view, you could say, that they're looking at. But she's putting across this argument that it really depends on if you live in France or the United States, what you believe. So the child psychiatrists, in the United States, psychiatrists can prescribe drugs. Psychologists can only do like talk therapy and stuff with you. They cannot prescribe drugs. So there's two different words that you might come across when you read about this type of stuff. But the psychiatrists are the actual doctors. They can give drugs to their patients. Okay. So they're considering it a biological disorder with a biological cause. So you guys probably know that word cause, the reason why it's happening. And because they believe that, based on their perspective, the way they treat it is with these stimulant medications. A stimulant usually wakes you up, so it's kind of an interesting thing because these people with and these are the brand names: Ritalin and Adderall. I don't know the chemical names. Maybe Hamid knows that kind of stuff.
Like adrenaline. It looks like adrenaline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. And it's funny because they're called stimulant medications, so in other people I think these help you have, wake up more, but it has an opposite effect, I think, when you give them to people with ADHD. It mellows them out. It makes them more calm. So
Negative feedback.
yeah, negative feedback, right. Yeah. But I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. You would know more about that. French child psychiatrists, on the other hand, view ADHD as a medical condition that has psychosocial and situational causes. Instead of treating children's focusing and behavioral problems with drugs, French doctors prefer to look for the underlying issue that is causing the child distress, not in the child's brain, but in the child's social context. Okay, so that's a different point of view. Hamid?
Okay, and also I put the Adderall and Ritalin names in chemicals.
Yeah.
Chemically.
Yeah. Dextroamphetamine and amphetamine. Yeah, that's a speed is.
Yes.
Speed. Yeah.
French child psychiatrists, on the other hand, view ADHD as a medical condition that has psychosocial and situational causes. Instead of treating children's focusing and behavioral problems with drugs, French doctors prefer to look for the underlying issue that is causing the child this stress, not in the child's brain, but in the child's social context.
Yeah. So this is a different point of view. They view it as having a different cause. So it might be still a medical condition, so they understand this is happening, but it has a different reason, and this is the psychosocial or situational. So this is having to do more with your mind and also the social context that you're in. For example, because it's often noticed at school, for example, and that's a situational thing. You don't live your whole entire life at school. So some of these children, if they're put out in nature or on sports teams or in a different situation, it might not be a problem, for example. So that's a different way of looking at it. Did you have a question, Goulet?
I said affected by external
yes. Causes.
Causes, yeah.
Yeah, external.
Not necessarily biological.
Yes. Yeah, that's the different perspective. So it may just have to do with where you are and what is going on in your environment rather than what's going on actually in your body. And so because of that, they have a different way of treating that. This is word to focus. You guys probably focus. That's one of the problems that kids seem to have sometimes, is being able to focus for a long period of time on something. And they call them behavioral problems. That's when behaviors like yelling out in the classroom or getting up and walking around or poking people with pencils, things like that, because they have a lot of energy. So they're going to be looking for the underlying issue. So underlying is describing what's really causing this. Not just what it looks like, but what's underneath or below. That's the image you get when you hear that word underlying. It's like, what is really at the base of this problem? The word distress is just when they don't, when there's like anxiety, the child's distress. When they're having this behavior, it's like they have a distress response. They're not feeling good. So they're not looking to the brain. They're looking to the social context. So what's going on in the classroom, in the family, in their life, that type of thing. Also, just to remind you guys, if you don't understand something, let me know, because I can explain any of the words. I'm kind of repeating what's happening while I'm telling you the different words that I might think might be new to some of you. Some of you might already understand them. I'm just retelling it in different words. All right, we'll keep going. They then choose to treat the underlying social context problem with psychotherapy or family counseling. This is a very different way of seeing things from the American tendency to attribute all symptoms to a biological dysfunction, such as a chemical imbalance in the child's brain. French don't use the same system of classification of childhood emotional problems as American psychiatrists. Okay. Ishmael?
Yes.
Right. You want to start right there?
Okay. They didn't choose to treat the underlying social context problem with psychotherapy or family counseling. This is a very different way of seeing things from the American tendency to attribute all symptoms to a biological dysfunction, such as a chemical imbalance in the child's brain. French child psychiatrists don't use the same system of classification of childhood emotional problems as American psychiatrists.
Right. So they choose to treat. That's to treat means to try to fix the problem. Like they said, Americans are trying to use drugs, and the French are trying different approaches, and they are psychotherapy. So that's when you go to a counselor, when you go to a therapist, you're working in that way. Sometimes we call it talk therapy because a lot of times you're talking about stuff, trying to get a different perspective. But there's also other types of modalities, maybe moving your body in certain ways, that kind of stuff. Or they try family counseling. Many people believe that it's not just a problem of the kid, but maybe of the whole context of the family. So you want to be talking to the parents and maybe the siblings as well. And that's a different way of seeing things. So it's a different point of view. And the American tendency just means that when you have a tendency to do something, it means that's usually what you do. So the Americans are usually saying or attributing, they're saying that all these symptoms are caused by a biological dysfunction, a biological problem, something that's not working correctly in the brain, perhaps, and actually a chemical imbalance in the brain. They're always looking in. Nowadays, the brain science is very popular, neuroscience in the United States, to try to figure out why a human being does the things they do. A lot of people these days are looking to the brain as to try to understand, and they take pictures of the brain and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so psychiatrists are in France are doing something different, and she, the author, wanted to make the point that even they classify, so there's a different system to understand what kinds of things children are, what kinds of things they're dealing with emotionally, their emotional problems, how they're feeling. They do not use the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or DSM. That's the big book of all the problems people might have psychologically or psychiatrically. According to sociologist Manuel Vallée, the French Federation of Psychiatry developed an alternative classification system as a resistance to the influence of the DSM-3. So the 3 just stands for the version of it. This alternative was the CFTMEA. Mario, you want to read that? Classification. Okay, I'm going to try it. Classification française des troubles mentaux de l'enfant et de l'adolescent. All right, that's in French.
Great.
All right,
Bravo.
woohoo! Bravo!
Bravo.
All right. First released in 1983 and updated in 1988 and 2000. The focus of CFTMEA is on identifying and addressing the underlying psychosocial causes of children's symptoms, not on finding the best pharmacological band-aids with which to mask symptoms. Okay, that's a big mouthful there. All right. And it's your turn, Mario.
Yeah.
All right.
They do not use the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder of DSM. According to psychologist Manuel Valli, the French Federation of Psychiatry developed an alternative classification system as resistant to the influence of the DSM-3. This alternative was the CFTMAEA, Classification française des troubles mentaux de l'enfant et de l'adolescent, first released in 1983 and updated to 1988 and 2000. The focus of CFTMAEA is on identifying and addressing the underlying psychosocial causes of children's symptoms, not on finding the best pharmacological band-aids with which to mask symptoms.
Great. That was a mouthful there. Okay, we have a lot of things. Yeah. Okay. All right, so they don't use this. According to, so whenever we use according to, that just means that this person said it. So this sociologist, so a person who, sociologist is more of the person who studies society at large and human behavior, not necessarily from a psychological point of view, but from a social point of view. So it's the social group that you're living in, that kind of stuff, cultural. Anyway, so he's the French Federation of Psychiatry. They developed an alternative, so a different one, and it was as a resistance. Interesting. When you are resisting something, you're going against it. So the French did not like this DSM, so they made an alternative system, which is here, this one. The French classification system of problems in adolescence, as you can see, this is infant and adolescent mental problems or mental disorders or psychological disorders. And so the focus is, it's instead of trying to find pharmacological, you said it really well, pharmacological, which is drugs, basically, they're always looking for the underlying psychosocial. So that's, again, that idea of what's going on in your mind, but also related to your environment, to your context in which you're living, as a cause for your symptoms, rather than just trying to figure out how we can stop your symptoms with drugs. And that's why a lot of times people talk about drugs as band-aids. Is that little thing that you put on your cut when you get a cut, and you have you put a little band-aid over it so you can protect it and not get it dirty. And so a lot of times people call drugs band-aids because it's not really addressing or getting to the bottom of your cause. It's just masking your symptoms or taking away your symptoms. So, for example, if your symptom is that you're very hyperactive and you're always yelling and talking out loud in class, and they give you a drug and now you just sit down and you're quiet and you listen to the teacher, they think that they solved your problem. But a lot of people believe that that's just masking the symptom. You still have the underlying problem, but the drug is like a band-aid. It's just covering up your symptoms instead of actually curing them, for example. All right. So, yes, Ishmael.
What does band-aids mean?
Band-aids. Okay, let me show you. Do you know, like, a Band-Aid? A Band-Aid is actually a brand name here in the United States. I'm going to show you. This is a Band-Aid right here. So when you get a cut, you put this over your cut on your arm, your hand, your leg. And this is a brand name. It's called a Band-Aid. So this is a bandage, but the Band-Aid is a brand name, and now we use it as a, he's not really literally referring to, or she's not, to a Band-Aid, but actually just covering up. So what the Band-Aid does is it covers up your cut so it doesn't get dirty, for example. But when we're talking about it in this article, we're talking about it, there's an example of Band-Aid on your knee. We're talking about it as covering up the symptoms. So the drug is covering up your symptom of whatever your problem is. It's not really curing you of the problem. So for example, say you have a stomach problem, for example, and you keep vomiting, maybe you could take a drug that will stop, but if your problem is because something is actually wrong with inside your intestines or something, I don't know, then maybe that medication is only going to work for a little bit, but then you're going to still have the same problem. And so it didn't really fix you. It just, yeah, covered it up. So that's what the Band-Aid means there. It's a drug Band-Aid, a pharmacological Band-Aid.
It treats only symptoms, not the origin of the...
Exactly, not the cause. Yes. So some people think you should go for the causes, not just treating the symptoms. Okay, to the extent that French clinicians are successful at finding and repairing what has gone awry in the child's social context, fewer children qualify for the ADHD diagnosis. Moreover, the definition of ADHD is not as broad as in the American system, which, in my view, tends to pathologize much of what is normal childhood behavior. The DSM specifically does not consider underlying causes. It thus leads clinicians to give the ADHD diagnosis to a much larger number of symptomatic children, while also encouraging them to treat those children with pharmaceuticals. Okay, Mine.
To the extent the French clinicians are successful at finding and repairing what has gone awry in the child's social context, fewer children qualify for the ADHD diagnosis. Moreover, the definition of ADHD is not as broad as in the American system, which in my view tends to pathologize much of what is the normal childhood behavior. The DSM specifically does not consider underlying causes. It thus leads clinicians to give the ADHD diagnosis to a much larger number of symptomatic children, while also encouraging them to treat those children with pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals.
Oh, pharmaceuticals. Okay.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals. All right. So here we go. To the extent that French clinicians are successful at finding and all right. Let's see. To the extent. Does everybody understand what that means? To the extent. So as far as they are successful. So it doesn't mean that they're always successful, but when they are, that's what it means. To the extent that they are, what they're doing is they're finding and repairing what has gone awry. So awry means what has gone wrong, for example, in the child's social context. So maybe something happened, maybe there was a trauma, a divorce, or a parent died or something, you know, what's going on in the classroom. Maybe the teacher is handling that child in a different way that's not very helpful. That's what they're looking for, and they're trying to repair that situation, not with drugs, of course, but with trying to figure out what's going on and then how can they improve the situation for the kid. Moreover, so when you use that word, it's kind of like a connecting word as you're writing or as you're speaking, especially in academic writing. It just means like even more, or in addition to, or you just can continue on. Moreover, like even like going beyond what you just said, there's even more, and that is that the definition is not as broad. Broad means as wide.
Broadband.
System, yeah, broadband, right? So if you have something, a definition that's very broad, then basically, you know, instead of maybe one child being diagnosed with this ADHD, now 5 of them will have the same diagnosis, because you can say, well, this symptom and this symptom, they all qualify. And so it's very broad. Instead of, that's compared to narrow. So opposite of broad would be a narrow classification system. And in her view, so that means in the lady who wrote this, the author's view, this tends to pathologize. The word pathologize is a verb, and it means to make it a disease. So a lot of what is considered normal childhood behavior, like being happy, being excited, being very energetic, running around, having questions, being curious, that behavior now is getting to be known as a disease, a problem, a disorder. And that's what happens, that's what this word means, pathologize, when you say that that's a problem. Because a pathology is a problem, a medical problem. Okay, so that's what that means. And the DSM, she's saying, does not even consider the underlying cause, looking at the symptoms and then the symptoms. And that's what this means. And it thus, but you could also say it therefore, or this is the reason that this leads to clinicians, the psychiatrists, to give this diagnosis to a lot of kids in the United States who have those symptoms, symptomatic children. So now in the United States, it's even like a joke. So if you might be watching a TV series or something like that and somebody acts really excited about something, the other person might make a joke and be sarcastic and say, hey, do you have ADHD? Because it's so, it's kind of like it's almost too common now for people to be diagnosed with it. Like even just regular normal enthusiasm, people are saying, oh, you might have ADHD, you know, or especially if stuff is just boring and you're not interested. And then you get distracted easily. So they're treating them with pharmaceuticals. That's a fancy word. It just means drugs. All right. So the French holistic psychosocial approach also allows for considering nutritional causes for ADHD-type symptoms. Specifically the fact that the behavior of some children is worsened after eating foods with artificial colors, certain preservatives, and or allergens. Clinicians who work with troubled children in this country, not to mention parents of many ADHD kids, are well aware that dietary interventions can sometimes help a child's problem. In the United States, the strict focus on pharmaceutical treatment of ADHD, however, encourages clinicians to ignore the influence of dietary factors on children's behavior. Okay, owner?
Okay. Okay. The French holistic psychosocial approach also allows for considering nutritional causes for ADHD type symptoms. Specifically, the fact that the behavior of some children is worsened after eating foods with artificial colors, certain preservatives, and or allergens. Clinically, who work with troubled children in this country, not to mention parents of many ADHD kids, are well aware that dietary interventions
Yes.
Can sometimes help a child's problem. In the United States, the strict focus on pharmaceutical treatments of ADHD, however, encourages clinicians to ignore the influence of dietary factors on children's behavior.
Good. Yes, so she's calling it a more holistic approach, means taking into consideration more things, not just the symptoms and then the right drug, but considering lots of things. When you take a holistic approach to your health, for example, you might look at what you eat, how you sleep, if you're stressed out a lot, if you're having fun, your whole life, not just biological symptoms. And so that's what she's saying, is they have a more holistic approach, psychosocial, there's that word again, which allows for, which means that, you know, therefore you can consider nutritional causes. Nutritional causes refers to food, the food that you eat, because people have noticed that for some children, their behavior gets worsened after eating certain types of foods, sometimes with artificial chemical colorings like red dyes, blue dyes, yellow, things that give the food its color. Certain preservatives, those are some other chemical preservatives that help the food stay longer on the shelf in the grocery store, for example. Also allergens. Some kids who are allergic to the common allergens like wheat or dairy products, peanuts, things like that are common. They might have certain behaviors after eating those types of foods. And so I think, let's see, not to mention, when you use that word not to mention, so when you say something and then you say not to mention, that means that you're also saying, well, and also these parents, for example, so clinicians who work with troubled children in this country, not to mention the parents, so it means like, and even the parents are aware of this. So that's how you use that phrase, not to mention. It's you are mentioning it, but it's kind of a funny phrase, not to mention, but you are mentioning it. The parents are very well aware that these dietary interventions, that's a long word, interventions, that means you intervene in the diet. So you can you know, take certain foods out of the child's diet or put certain foods in. Sometimes maybe the child is not eating enough protein. You know, they're eating too many carbs, for example. Something like that has been shown to help.
Can we say,
yes?
Can we say to control dietary?
To control the diet, you would say.
Yeah, the diet of the children.
Yeah, control the diet, or you could say control the dietary influences. That would be the same kind of thing. Yeah, what's influencing the diet. Yeah, and so they had in the United States, though, she's still talking about them having a strict focus, like a narrow focus. They're very much just looking at the drugs. What drugs can we use to, you know, help their behavior? And then, of course, there are the vastly different philosophies of child rearing in the United States and France. These divergent philosophies could account for why French children are generally better behaved than their American counterparts. Pamela Druckerman highlights the divergent parenting styles in her recent book, Bringing Up Bébé. I believe her insights are relevant to a discussion of why French children are not diagnosed with ADHD in anything like the numbers we are seeing in the United States. Okay, Amparo?
And then, of course, there are the vastly different philosophies of child rearing in the United States and France. These divergent philosophies could account for why French children are generally better behaved than their American counterparts. Pamela Druckerman highlights the divergent parenting styles in her recent book, Bringing Up Bébé. I believe her insights are relevant to a discussion of why French children are not diagnosed with ADHD in anything like the numbers we are seeing in the United States.
Yeah. So they are vastly different philosophies. Vastly different is very much like wide, they're big differences. So the French, and she's basing this on one book. Who really knows? This is a book that this American lady wrote, Pamela Druckerman, and after living in France and raising some of her kids there, and watching how the French parent differently. So they are divergent philosophies. Divergent means they diverge. They go in different directions. So they're just different parenting philosophies. And she's saying that maybe this is the reason. Could account for. That means the reason why the French children are generally, so generally speaking, across the board, everybody, but better behaved than their American counterparts. So their counterparts would be the American children. So the counterpart to French children is the American children. Yeah, so this book brings up the different insights. So her insights, like what she found, and so this author says, I believe her insights. So she's referring to what this lady, Pamela Druckerman, wrote about. Her insights are the things that she discovered, her experiences, what she learned, and she believes they are relevant to a discussion. So they are important to consider. So if you're going to think about why the French children are not being diagnosed as much with ADHD, you have to also look at the different parenting styles. So she brought up the idea of underlying symptoms, social context, parenting styles, and food so far as other things to look at. From the time their children are born, French parents provide them with a firm cadre. The word means frame or structure. Children are not allowed, for example, to snack whenever they want. Meal times are at 4 specific times of the day. French children learn to wait patiently for meals rather than eating snack foods whenever they feel like it. French babies, too, are expected to conform to limits set by parents and not by their crying selves. French parents let their babies cry it out if they are not sleeping through the night at the age of 4 months. Okay, Goliath.
From the time their children are born, French parents provide them with a firm cadre. The word means frame or structure. Children are not allowed, for example, to snack whenever they want. Meal times are at four specific times of the day. French children learn to wait patiently for meals rather than eating snack foods whenever they feel like it. French babies, too, are expected to conform to limits set by parents and not by their crying selves. French parents let their babies cry it out if they are not sleeping through the night at the age of 4 months.
Yeah. So here we go. Parents, firm. That means firm. Again, that's that word. It means very concrete. It's fixed. It's not wavy. It's not going to waver. It's not going to change. It's going to be very fixed. And she gives some examples that they don't eat snacks whenever they want to. So that's something that American kids can do a lot of times. Just go grab food if you're hungry. But she's saying that they have 4 specific meal times, and that way they are learning to wait patiently. That means instead of crying and throwing tantrums. And also that even the babies are expected to conform. That means to comply or to follow the rules or the limits. My parents, a limit is something, you can't do this. That's your limit. And so they even let the babies cry it out. That means, for example, if they're not sleeping through the night, they just can cry themselves to sleep in their crib or something. That's a parenting topic that's very much debated in the United States. Should you pick your baby up and hold it, or should you just leave it in the crib to cry it out? So apparently, according to that one book, many French people let their babies cry it out. That way they learn they have to go to sleep. All right, French parents, Druckerman observes, love their children just as much as American parents. They give them piano lessons, take them to sports practice, and encourage them to make the most of their talents. But French parents have a different philosophy of discipline. Consistently enforced limits, in the French view, make children feel safe and secure. Clear limits, they believe, actually make a child feel happier and safer, something that is congruent with my own experience as both a therapist and a parent. Okay, Hamid?
French parents, as Druckerman observes, love their children just as much as American parents. They give them piano lessons, take them to sports practice, and encourage them to make the most of their talents. But French parents have a different philosophy of discipline. Consistently enforced limits in the French view make children feel safe and secure. Clear limits, they believe, actually make a child feel happier and safer. Something that is congruent with my own experience as both a therapist and a parent.
Mm-hmm. So she's saying, let's see, observes this author who wrote the book. This is what that's what she observed. They love them just as much, and she gives examples of that, what they do, but they have a different philosophy of discipline. So discipline is what your kid can or can't do, and how you enforce that. Do you yell? Do you scream at them? Do you put them in their room? Do you spank them? Do you say, okay, not, don't worry about it? And she's saying that they are consistently enforced limits. So enforcing the same limit in the same way is what the French do. They are very consistent. Consistent means you do the same thing every time, and this helps the children feel safe and secure, and it makes them even feel happier and safer. And she says that is congruent, so that means that's in agreement with her own experience as a therapist and a parent. So the author who wrote this is saying that that's true for her. That's what she also has observed, that these having clear limits and enforcing them, so that means making sure that your children know what the rules are and that they have to follow them, is something that works. Finally, French parents believe that hearing the word no rescues children from the tyranny of their own desires, and spanking, when used judiciously, is not considered child abuse in France. As a therapist who works with children, it makes perfect sense to me that French children don't need medications to control their behavior, because they learn self-control early in their lives. The children grow up in families in which the rules are well understood and a clear family hierarchy is firmly in place. Okay, Ishmael.
Yes.
Read that.
Finally, French parents believe that hearing the word no rescues children from the tyranny of their own desires, and spanking, when used judiciously, is not considered child abuse in France. As a therapist who works with children, it makes perfect sense to me that French children don't need medication to control their behavior, because they learn self-control early in their lives. The children grow up in families in which the rules are well understood and a clear family hierarchy is firmly in place.
Good. So they say the no, and it rescues, so it's the children from this phrase here, tyranny of their own desires. So your own desires can be like a tyranny. So they're talking about little children probably who they just want what they want, and then they throw a tantrum or cry when they don't get it. So spanking, that's when you hit your child on their butt, on their bottom. When used judiciously, the word judiciously means like not used all the time, but in very specific, for very specific reasons, not just, you're not abusing them. So it's not considered a child abuse. In the United States, this is also a very big parenting topic. Should parents be able to spank their kids or not? There's lots of different opinions about that, for and against. And she's saying that to her, as a therapist, this all makes perfect sense. That means it's understandable to her why children in France don't need medications, because they have learned to control their behavior. That means they know how to, be quiet when they need to be quiet. They know how to listen. They have self-control earlier in their lives. And they have a family hierarchy. So in the United States, there's a big debate of, are your children just as important as the parents, or do the parents have some power over the children, and how does that work? So that's a big parenting topic in the United States. In French families, as Druckerman describes them, parents are firmly in charge of their kids instead of the American family style in which the situation is all too often vice versa. Okay, Mario.
Yeah. In French, families, as Druckerman describes them, parents are firmly in charge of their kids instead of the American family style in which the situation is all too often vice versa.
Vice versa, yeah. So basically, the parents are in charge rather than having the kids, which she said a lot of times in America, vice versa, that means the opposite. So it's the opposite a lot of times in the American family where the children seem to be the one in charge. They are the ones bossing the parents around, you could say. All right, well, we already ran out of time, but I just wanted to ask Mario, does that seem to be an accurate description of the French philosophy on parenting, generally speaking? Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is the way French people used to bring in children. And yes, I think it's okay with that. I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And since we're already past time, feel free to leave if you have to. But Amparo, what would you say in your country is the parenting style? Is it the hierarchical one where the parents are more firmly in control? Yeah.
It used to be in that way, but now it's changing a lot. The parents feel a little guilty because they don't spend too many time with their children, so they are so permissive with them, and so the children said, I want this, I want that, and parents said, well, you deserve it, and so they are no boundaries now. I think it's that is the principal reason, external reasons and not biological reasons. There is no hyperactive, just restless, spoiled child. No more.
Yeah. Okay. So is that something that you hear about in Ecuador about
now
ADHD? Is that something you hear about?
That is the new idea that the doctors sell.
Oh, okay. We got to be careful. We have a doctor in the classroom.
But that is not his specialty.
He's a surgeon. Yeah, he's a surgeon.
You're a surgery, so it doesn't affect with my comment.
Right. Yeah, I'm just kidding. No, it's better to speak out anyways. So Goliath, what do you think? Do you have any opinions about this diagnosis and what it has to do with, a biological perspective or more of a parental, dietary, social? Goliath? What'd you do? How about you, Hamid?
When I was child, I was a little bit hyperactivity child.
Yeah.
But nowadays, I am reversible. I mean, I am sitting all time in front of the computer.
Yeah.
So I changed it 100%.
Yeah. Well, that is also one of the things that a lot of people think is, in a certain situation you might be hyperactive, but when you really are passionate about something like you are about chemistry, technology, then you don't exhibit those same symptoms. So it also has to do with, what are you really doing in your life and what do you get excited about? If you have a lot of interest and enthusiasm and then somebody's trying to teach you something that's pretty boring, you might screw around a little bit and goof off, and not pay attention.
Well, in my opinion, the minority of children is hyperactivity. Majority is like me. I mean, in front of the computer or smartphone, tablet PC, etc.
Yeah. Okay, Ishmael, do you have any thoughts about this?
Yes, Lisa, it was very interesting subject for me. I have a 5-year-old son, and he always plays games on computers on tablets and smartphones.
Yes.
I couldn't stop him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he eats too much sugary product, and he don't eat regular food with us. And it was very interesting topic for me.
Yeah.
I try to make some rules for him. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, every generation of parents seems to have the new things to deal with the children. You know, if it's the radio, then the TV, and now it's the computers and food. You know, it's hard because everything is changing so fast. As a parent, you don't really know what is the best thing to do because they don't live in the same world that you grew up in. You know, it's a different world now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But
Mario?
I think the best thing is to try to keep them away from the television, because there's only a message, a bad message. Don't just to say just buy things like this.
Yes.
You know, and I think when the children they grown up, it's better for them to live their life. But when in the little age, you know, not it's better to keep them away from the TV set as much as you can, because this is danger, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people agree with that more and more, but a lot of people don't. But but yeah, a lot of people are having more awareness that if you're seeing all these images and hearing all these opinions and voices when you're very young, then you might believe that more than if you weren't exposed, and have your parents and your other family members and friends be more the influence than anybody. You know.
And there is a expression, if you know, I am luckier than my parents, but I am unluckier than my children.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's always the evolution. That would be like what's coming next. Yep. So we'll see.
Yes.
It's always an adventure. Okay, you guys, thanks for coming to class and participating. And
it's great class, Elisa. Yes,
thank you.
Great. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Very interesting subject.
See you next time. Okay, bye-bye.
Take care.